Hey, what's up everyone? My name is William and today we're going to be going over the EXS24's instrument editor window. So I've just opened up a new session here. I just loaded up an instrument track with an EXS24 on it, EXS24 stereo mode of course. And we open it up. We're going to be looking at the Steinway Grand Piano 2 preset for this video, just so we can get an understanding as to what's happening in the instrument editor window. So I went to, I clicked on presets here, went down to factory, acoustic pianos, and then you can scroll down to Steinway Grand Piano 2 if you want to use the same one as me. So to open up the instrument editor, first of all, we can click this edit button that's right here inside of our EXS24. If for some reason you don't have this, it could be because you don't have advanced tools activated. You have to make sure all these check boxes are checked, just in case, if that's not there, that's something you should check. So moving on, let's just jump right into it. Let's click on this edit button and it opens up this huge, scary looking window with a lot of text. So I'm just going to drag this out so we can see our groups and everything. So now this is a lot to take in, but what's happening is each note on our keyboard is assigned to multiple audio files. That's what a zone is. A zone is a representation of an audio file, and what notes will be, or what notes will trigger, that zone. So let's just jump right into it though. So for all these zones, we have a ton of zones. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different zones for one zone, if that makes sense. There's 7 different versions of zone 1, 7 different versions of zone 2, and we have 146 zones, it looks like, in total. So a lot of zones are happening here. These are all just places on our keyboard that represent audio files that will be triggered when we press the corresponding notes. For example, pressing that note, that note. These are all triggering different zones. Now, if we get our mouse to look like this, we can drag this up and see kind of what's happening here. All of these blocks down here in this window where we see our keyboard, each of these is a different zone. There's multiple zones assigned to the same keys. For example, we can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 zones assigned to the B3 and C4 keys. So it's a B3 to the C#4. I wasn't paying attention. It actually stretches over to the C#4 there. And each of these, there's so many zones on one note, so we can get multiple different sounds from the same note. For example, if we look at our audio file by double clicking on the zone, if we click on this zone and then it highlighted this one, so I just double clicked on the audio file name, you can see this is what our zone looks like that covers those. This is the audio file that's going to be playing, and it's going to get pitched up and down slightly depending on the note. If we open up the next one, it looks slightly different. Slightly different, slightly different. These are all just different zones. I haven't looked through this instrument in depth, but my my assumption is different velocities will trigger different zones of these and things like that, dependent on some of the settings we have. You can see over here there's different ones. So pedal V1, pedal V2. So this is a very complex instrument. They put a lot of work into it. But moving on though, that about covers zones. Obviously, you can go much more in depth, but this is what zones look like. You can assign a audio file to the zone that you select. You can click on a zone and adjust the size depending on how many notes it affects and things like that. As well as change some options of it. You can change whether or not the pitch is adjusted as you go up and down the notes. All of these different options, volume, panning, different things like that. Also, something to keep in mind is if you want to see a couple more options, if you click this view button up here, these are even more options that you can enable to look at. For example, velocity range. So this is the velocity range of this note right here. If we enabled it, we could say, oh no, we only want it to play when you're pressing the note really hard, or something like that. So that about sums up zones though. I know that was a very brief description, but it's pretty straightforward once you kind of look at and study what's happening here. It just, you make these zones to determine whether or not a audio file is playing on a selected note, and you have some parameters that you can control about that audio file. Next though we have is groups. So if we click on groups, we can see all of the groups right here, or if we are in zone view by clicking this button here, our groups are actually in the left. We get all of our groups right here. So now groups are very cool because if we look at our groups view, we can see the name of our groups, and you get key ranges of our groups, volumes, panning. We get parameters that we can control about these groups. And now what this allows us to do is assign multiple zones and put them in a group. For example, let's just make a new group real quick by clicking group up here and then clicking new group, or you can use this shortcut command. And then our group is automatically named group 22, excuse me. Now I'm gonna just click on the C3 note. So now clicking on it like that is zone 14 copy 2. I'm gonna drag that zone into that group. So now we have our C note in this group. So now if we click on our note, it sounds like that. If we change some parameters of our group, for example, our attack, let's raise our attack a lot. And now remember, since we only assigned this group, it's only affecting the notes that it's highlighted over, which it's only highlighted over B2, C3, and C sharp 3. And so as soon as we go to some of these other notes, it sounds normal, but then we get to B2, C3, and C sharp 3. And they have that longer attack, since in the groups view we made our group 22 have the longer attack there. So that allows for some more control. If you want a certain range of zones or certain zones to all have the same type of effect, if you want a bunch of different zones to have a longer attack, and then zone or an area of zones somewhere else on the keyboard, you wanted to have a very fast attack, you could do things like that, and change things such as cutoff, max voices. You get a whole lot of different options you can control. If you think about it, it's essentially like multiple zones on it's essentially like groups on a logic session. If you group tracks together, things that are in that group, effects and things, it'll be affecting all of the tracks. It's the same type of thing. Zones are just our tracks, and I say that as, a correlation that we can, see between the two. Because if we put multiple zones in our group, then, it's considered, they're going to be grouped together and have those same effects on them. So let's get another zone. I'm going to click D3 right here. So So now we're going to grab this zone and also put it in our group. So now we should have B2, C3, C sharp 3, D3, D sharp 3, and E3 all have that long attack. So I'm going to start a little bit before our B2 note, just so we can hear the difference happening. First though, I need to make sure, again, my attack is set up. So I'm going to just crank this attack up again on our group 22. So now I'm going to start a little bit before where our groups start, and then we'll listen to what's happening. So you could hear the differences there. You know, again, since we had, you know, our groups with the C3 and D sharp 3 zones, and those zones can contain multiple notes. Each of those contains 3 notes. So in total, now we have 6 notes on our keyboard that have that longer attack that we set. And we, again, could do multiple things like adjust filter cutoff. If we clicked our view option again, we could see different parameters that we could even control over that. But very cool stuff you can do with the instrument editor. It's just how how your samples react to what's being played on the keyboard. And you get a lot of flexibility. I mean, you can assign one sample to every single note on your keyboard if you wanted. Let's look at zones real quick. And for example, say zone number 14, copy 2, our C note zone right here. Say we wanted this to be our entire keyboard. Well, all we would have to do is change our starting note to, or excuse me, not our starting note. We would change our low. We'd look at our key range. We'd change our low all the way down, and we'd change our high all the way up. And then the next thing you know, the zone is on every single note. The only problem now is that we have other zones that are being played when we click the notes. So let me just highlight all of these groups real quick. I'm just going to delete all of these groups. And everything that's not in a group now, all the zones that are not in a group, I'm going to highlight all of them, delete them. Now if we look at this group 22 again, now all of them have that longer attack because we have got rid of all of the groups and assigned this group or assigned this zone to every single note on our keyboard. And again, if we didn't do that, for example, if we had them only to that original range, now since we have no zones on our other notes, these other notes aren't going to do anything. It's just our zone that we assign, or our area that we assign our zone to. So now those are the only 3 notes on our keyboard that work. And obviously with the preset that we were looking at, it was a very complex instrument. It had multiple zones for multiple things. But I mean, when you make an instrument or when you edit an instrument, in your EXS24, it does not have to be that complex. It does not. I mean, especially when you're learning how everything's working with the EXS24, you don't have to worry about that. It can be as simple as you making, one zone with an audio sample, making sure it changes pitch as it changes notes, and then you have, a sampler. And again, since we've assigned it to the group, and the group has that attack, we have those things happening to it. I know that was a lot to cover, though. That's the general idea of the instrument editor window, though. I hope that all of that made sense. I hope you learned something today in this video. If you have any questions, definitely ask your mentor about it. Because the EXS24 is a very versatile sampler, and it's very cool to use. The instrument editor is definitely something that you'll want to get comfortable with. But again, my name is William. I hope you learned something. Thank you for watching.